Why do people ever give strangers the power to govern their lives? And what makes thousands, even millions of individuals agree to play by the same rules, choosing leaders instead of fighting for power? The idea is so familiar, we hardly question it. Yet democracy, government by the people, has one of the strangest, and in some cases most delicate, histories in all of political practice. Let's journey backward, not just to the famous birthplaces of democracy, but through passages and philosophies that have shaped what we think collective rule even should mean. First, imagine Athens, around 2,500 years ago. In the shadow of the Acropolis, a gathering of free male citizens debated, argued, and voted. Their system relied on open discussion and direct action, a physical show of hands, not anonymous ballots dropped in a box. Listen to these words, spoken by the historian who watched Athenian democracy in action. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority, but of the whole people. Everyone is equal before the law. That perspective comes from an ancient speech recorded to capture the ideals of that new system. The reflection here is striking. Democracy was more than a process. It was a radical experiment in human equality, but also deeply limited. Women, slaves, foreigners, most people living in Athens, had no say in this so-called government of the people. The seed was there, but it would take centuries before the tree would offer shade to many more. Fast forward to the Roman Republic. The story gets complicated. Roman citizens, also just a fraction of the population, voted for officials, and power shifted between assemblies and the Senate. But unlike Athens, Rome built in a system of checks and balances. In the words of a Roman orator, the people's voice is, in a sense, the supreme law. Yet, for that law to endure, it must be bound together by reason, custom, and mutual agreement. Here, democracy is fragile. Rules and traditions can keep chaos at bay, but only if people buy into the process. If they don't, well, Rome's republic didn't last forever. The collapse of Rome and the spread of monarchies in Europe seemed for centuries like a retreat from democracy. Kings and emperors insisted authority flowed from the heavens, not from crowds. Yet voices still whispered, sometimes shouted, ideas about freedom, consent, and shared rule. Enter the age of philosophy, when writers and thinkers called for a new social contract. Imagine reading these lines, written as kingdoms seemed unshakable. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. The right to govern derives from the consent of the governed. This idea captured the imagination of rebels, philosophers, and eventually entire nations. Suddenly, democracy was not just a remnant of ancient times. It became a challenge to unchecked power and a vision for societies yet to be born. Let's pause and reflect. If democracy depends on the consent of the governed, how do people, utter strangers, learn to agree on enough basics to operate a country together? The answer has often come from the written word. As printing spread knowledge, debate flourished. As poetry, plays, and newspapers raised new questions, democracy became something to demand, not just accept. In England, the push for shared power crept forward through revolution, war, and negotiation. The famous Magna Carta opened a narrow window, with a king stating he could be bound by law. Centuries later, another English voice declared, over a restless and then revolutionary nation, no taxation without representation. The message was not just a slogan. It was a demand that the governed must have a say or risks chaos and rebellion. Cross the Atlantic, and the ideal of democracy is put to a test in an unprecedented way. 13 colonies decide they will not be ruled by distant kings. In a building in Philadelphia, these words are written: We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. For perhaps the first time in modern history, democracy was set as the official principle of a new country, not a philosophical dream, but the basis for law. But here's where the reflection deepens. As soon as democracy spreads, so do its contradictions. The same declarations of liberty coexisted with slavery, discrimination, and exclusion. Movements for universal suffrage, votes for all adults, regardless of gender or class, took generations more. Let's jump ahead to the 19th and 20th centuries as poetry and song fuse with political hope. In the battle for the vote, British and American reformers wrote these verses. Shout, shout up with your song, cry with the wind for the dawn is breaking. March, march, swing you along, wide blows our banner and hope is waking. Listen closely, the lyrics are not just art, but fuel. For every extension of the right to vote, there have been marches, speeches, songs, and stories to shape public imagination. And then, there is the moment when democracy bends, nearly breaks, and recovers. In the ashes of war, new speeches call for a deeper commitment. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Those words underline a sobering truth. Democracy is not a guarantee. It is a process always at risk, always rebuilt, sometimes destroyed, sometimes reborn. Now, around the world, what democracy means and who gets to participate looks dramatically different from place to place. Today, more than half of the world's countries hold elections of some kind. And yet, the struggle to make democracy meaningful for all continues, shaped by technological shifts, new philosophies, and the realities of global interconnection. Let's consider. The history of democracy is not just a sequence of facts and dates, but a living dialogue between striving individuals, their communities, and the structures they build together. It's fragile, contested, and sometimes contradictory. Yet, time and again, people have fought to expand the people, to include more voices and wider circles of trust. So, 8 moments, 8 facts, but a current that runs deeper than facts alone. The tree of democracy, rooted in argument, watered by poetry and protest, shaped by the dreams and suffering of millions, continues to grow. Why do people choose democracy again and again for all its flaws? Maybe because, at its heart, democracy is a bet on each other, on the idea that strangers can, with effort, find common cause, that rules can be shaped, broken, and reshaped in the name of freedom, and that the project of ruling ourselves is never truly finished. In the end, democracy is not just government machinery or ritual voting days. It's an ongoing negotiation about whose voices count, whose stories get told, and how much trust we have in one another. Its history is still being written every time anyone, anywhere, asks the question, who gets to decide? So next time you see a ballot or a protest march, or hear a debate about rights or rules, remember, you are witnessing another chapter in a story much older and much stranger than it seems. A story that asks, at every turn, what does it mean not just to be governed, but to govern ourselves?